watched it happen more times than I can count. Someone starts out with real effort. They put in the time. They stay disciplined. They do the work. And right when it's about to turn, the results start forming. Momentum starts building. They walk away. They quit. Not because they weren't capable, not because they didn't have the potential, but because they couldn't see what was about to happen. That's the hard part. The work shows up first. The results always come later. And for most people, that delay feels like failure. They think, I've been doing this for weeks, for months, and nothing's changing. But something is changing, just not in ways you can measure yet. It's happening underneath, inside your habits, inside your mind, inside the structure of your life. But because it's invisible, most people assume it's not working. I've been there. I know what it feels like to show up day after day and wonder if any of it is going to pay off. You start questioning everything. You wonder if you're wasting your time. You look at other people who seem further along and you start thinking about quitting. But what I've learned is this: if you quit during that quiet stretch, if you stop just before the shift, you never get to see what you were building. You throw away the payoff that was just around the corner. This is what we're going to talk about. That space between effort and evidence, that stretch where most people give up, and how to stay long enough for the work to start working. Because the truth is, most people aren't missing some secret formula. They're not missing talent. They're just leaving too early. They're quitting before the change shows up. And if they had stayed just a little longer, they would have seen everything start to turn. So if you've been showing up and not seeing what you expected, you're not broken. You're not behind. You're just in the middle. And the middle always feels like it's not working. But the middle is where everything's forming. That's the message. Most people quit right before it starts working. And this time, you're not going to be one of them. One of the hardest things to accept is how much progress happens in silence. You do the work, but nothing changes, at least not right away. You build the routine, you show up on schedule, you follow through, and everything around you still looks the same. That's where most people start to doubt. They think, if this were working, I'd see something by now. But that's the illusion. Something is happening. You just can't see it yet. Think of it like laying a foundation. You dig, you pour concrete, you reinforce it with steel, and for weeks, maybe months, there's no structure above the ground. To a bystander, it looks like nothing's happening, but if you understand construction, you know the foundation is the most important part. Everything else depends on it. Same with your life, same with your habits. You're building something underneath that eventually will support everything above. But most people walk away during the digging phase. You can see it in the gym. Someone starts showing up. They work hard for 2 weeks, maybe 3. No major changes in the mirror. The scale barely moves. They get discouraged. They stop. But what they didn't see was what was building internally. Improved blood flow, stronger lungs, stabilizing muscles, mental resilience. The stuff that doesn't show up on the surface right away. The stuff that sets the stage for the big visible changes later. Same goes for business. Someone launches an idea. They reach out a few times. Try to get clients. Try to build something. And it feels like they're shouting into an empty room. Nobody responds. They think it's not working. But what they didn't see was the people watching quietly, the credibility slowly being built, the patterns forming behind the scenes. They give up just before someone was ready to reach out, just before it was about to catch. See, most results are lagging indicators. They show up after the effort, not during it. you plant seeds, you water them, you take care of them, and for a long time, you see nothing. But underground, roots are forming. Strength is forming. And when that breakthrough happens, it looks sudden, but it wasn't. It was just quiet. That's the illusion. Nothing seems to be happening right before everything is. I've seen it in people learning new skills. They fumble through it for weeks. Nothing clicks. Everything feels awkward. They start thinking, I'm just not good at this. But what they don't realize is that every repetition is teaching the brain something. Wiring new patterns, building coordination. And then one day, click, it works. Suddenly it flows. But it wasn't sudden. It was building underneath, unnoticed, until it finally showed up. And this is why discipline is so important in the early stages. Not because you'll see fast results, but because you won't. You'll need a reason to keep going, even when nothing seems to be happening. You'll need to believe in the process before the proof shows up. And that's hard. But it's also the test. And the ones who pass that test, they get to see what it becomes. The ones who make it are never the ones who had the easiest road. They're the ones who stayed long enough to let the quiet work become visible. They didn't need applause. They didn't need signs. They just kept building, quietly, consistently. They knew something most people don't. Results are never instant. They're earned in the silence. So if it feels like nothing's happening right now, good. That means you're doing the kind of work that matters, the kind that builds strong roots, the kind that sets up lasting results. Just don't let the silence fool you. It's not failure. It's just the foundation being poured. Momentum doesn't announce itself. It doesn't tap you on the shoulder and say, here I come. It builds quietly, slowly, below the surface. You don't even know it's happening until one day something clicks, and suddenly everything moves faster. People think momentum shows up when results appear, but that's backwards. Results show up because momentum was already forming. You've probably felt it. You stick with a habit, even when it feels pointless. You keep showing up, even when you don't feel like it. And at first, it's heavy. Every step takes effort. Every decision feels like a grind. But then, one day, it gets a little easier. You move a little quicker, things start flowing. That's momentum. But you didn't get it by accident. You built it, one small action at a time. People think success is about intensity, big bursts of effort, huge pushes. But the truth is, success usually starts with rhythm, with consistency, with boring repetition. The person who keeps stacking bricks every day, even when they don't see the wall rising, is the one who eventually looks up and realizes they've built something solid. And the reason they got there? They never stopped. Momentum starts with friction. The beginning is always the hardest part, like pushing a car that's stuck in neutral. The first few feet take all your strength. But once it starts rolling, once the wheels start turning, each step forward takes less force. That's what habits do. They reduce the friction. And soon enough, what used to be hard starts to feel normal. But here's the trick. Most people stop before the momentum kicks in. They push for a few days, maybe a week, but it's still heavy, still inconvenient, still awkward. So they say it's not working, and they quit, not realizing that the heaviness was part of the process, not realizing that the turning point was just around the corner. You build momentum by staying in motion, even slow motion. Even if all you can do today is something small, that still counts. Because momentum doesn't need speed, it just needs direction. It just needs consistency. It just needs to know you're not going backward. And once you've got that going, things begin to shift. I've seen it in writing. The first paragraph is slow, the second is clunky. But by the third or fourth, something loosens. The ideas start to flow, the words line up. And it's not because inspiration suddenly arrived. It's because momentum was created through effort, through showing up before you felt ready, through motion. Same in business. The first few calls are awkward. The first few products don't sell. The first few months feel like shouting into a void. But every message builds skill. Every attempt sharpens your instincts. Every step forward collects experience. And all that invisible progress eventually creates results. It just takes time to catch up. So if you feel like you're stuck in the heavy part, keep going. That resistance you feel, that's the early stage of momentum forming. That's your body, your mind, your process, slowly lining up behind your habits. And once it locks in, things that felt impossible start feeling automatic. Not because life got easier, but because you got stronger. Momentum rewards the steady, the ones who don't panic when progress is slow, the ones who keep showing up, not for applause, not for recognition, but because they understand the truth. Momentum isn't something you wait for. It's something you earn, quietly, repetitively, below the surface, until one day it carries you. There's a moment that shows up in almost every journey. It's quiet but heavy. You're doing the work, you're staying consistent, and yet you feel stuck. You're not seeing results. You're not feeling excited. The spark is gone. The doubts get louder. And this is where most people quit. Not because they don't care, not because they're lazy, but because they don't realize what they're feeling is normal. That low point, that slump, that's the dip. And the dip is dangerous because it convinces you that the effort isn't worth it. It tricks you into thinking that nothing's changing when in fact, everything is. You just haven't reached the part where it shows. I've been there, staring at the same routine, wondering if it's leading anywhere, questioning whether I'm wasting my time, comparing myself to people who seemed further along. That feeling doesn't mean you're doing something wrong. It means you're human and you're in the middle of something important. Most people assume the dip means stop. They think if it were the right path, it wouldn't feel this hard. But that's exactly backwards. The dip is proof that you're stretching, that you're doing something meaningful. Because the things that matter, the things that change your life, don't come without resistance. And the dip is just that resistance asking if you're serious about this. Think of a rocket. The moment it uses the most fuel isn't halfway through the flight. It's right at takeoff. The part where it looks like it's barely moving, that's where it's burning the most energy, pushing against gravity, fighting for elevation. That's the dip. That's the part that feels the hardest, but it's also the part that matters most. If you quit in the dip, you never find out what was waiting for you on the other side. You never get to see what all the quiet work was building. You miss the point where everything starts clicking, where things begin to compound, where the results catch up to the effort. Because here's the truth. Most breakthroughs are hidden just past the dip, just beyond the part where you were ready to give up. And the reason the dip is so tricky is because it shows up without warning. It's not always dramatic. Sometimes it just feels like boredom or fatigue or a little voice asking, what's the point? That voice is loud when you're tired. It's loud when you're not seeing what you hoped for, but it's not a voice of reason. It's a test. And the people who keep going through the dip, the ones who show up even when they don't feel like it, Those are the ones who find out what was waiting. Because eventually, the dip gives way. The heaviness lifts. And all of a sudden, the work feels lighter. The momentum picks up. Things start happening faster. Not because life changed, but because you kept going long enough for the work to start working. So if you're in that place right now, if the routine feels dull, if the doubts are creeping in, don't panic. You're not off track. You're right where you're supposed to be. Just don't stop. Don't make a permanent decision in a temporary low. Ride it out. Show up anyway. Because the dip isn't the end. It's the bridge. And on the other side is everything you've been working for. Motivation is nice, but it doesn't last. It fades. It wears off. One bad day, one missed result, one quiet stretch, and it disappears. That's why you can't build your future on motivation. You've got to build it on something stronger, something steadier, something that sticks even when you don't feel like showing up. That something is discipline. Discipline is what keeps you going when motivation is nowhere to be found. It's what gets you out of bed when the energy isn't there. What makes you show up, even when you're not seeing results yet. Discipline doesn't care how you feel. It just says, this is what we do. And that's the kind of structure that gets you through the hard parts. You don't need to be fired up every day. You don't need to feel unstoppable. But you do need a system. You need habits that are stronger than your mood. Because moods change. Life changes. But discipline, if you build it right, becomes automatic. It becomes who you are. The mistake most people make is relying on emotion to keep going. They wait for the right mood, the right energy, the perfect timing. But discipline doesn't wait. Discipline does the thing, no matter what. It turns effort into routine. It turns progress into momentum. And it builds trust, the kind of trust where you know you'll show up, simply because you've trained yourself to do it. And once discipline takes over, you don't need to negotiate with yourself every morning. You don't need a pep talk. You just do the work. You follow the system, because now the habit is in place. And that's what builds the bridge, one small decision at a time. I've said it before, but it's worth repeating. The reason most people quit isn't because they weren't good enough. It's because they didn't stay long enough. They didn't build a routine strong enough to carry them through the silent part. But the ones who did, the ones who made the habit non-negotiable, those are the ones who got to the other side. It doesn't matter if you're building a business, learning a skill, improving your health, or working on yourself. Discipline is the bridge. It connects the effort to the outcome. It carries you through the doubt, through the boredom, through the setbacks. And you don't have to get it perfect. You just have to stay on it. Some days you'll do it well. Some days you'll do it messy. But as long as you don't stop, as long as you keep walking, you're still moving forward, and eventually, the work will reward you. The results will catch up, not because of motivation, but because you stayed consistent long enough for discipline to carry you through. So if you're tired, if the spark is gone, if the excitement wore off, don't worry, you're not doing it wrong. You're just in the part where discipline has to take over. Let it. Lean into the structure. Trust the habit. Keep walking, because the other side of the bridge is closer than you think. There's something that happens when you stay just a little longer, when you keep showing up after the excitement's gone, when you push past the doubt, the boredom, the silence, and you keep going anyway. At first, nothing changes. It still feels slow, still feels heavy. But then something shifts. Not all at once, not dramatically, but it starts and you feel it. The work starts clicking. The rhythm gets smoother. People begin to notice. Opportunities begin to show up. The results you thought were never coming, they arrive. Slowly at first, then faster. And it almost feels unfair because now everything is moving. The momentum is carrying you. The structure you built in the quiet starts paying off in the open. But here's the thing, it only happened because you stayed. That's the part most people never see, because they left too early. They quit in the middle, just before the turnaround, just before the breakthrough, and they'll never know how close they were. That's the cost of quitting. You don't just lose progress. You lose what could have been. You lose the payoff that was already forming. I've watched it happen with people in business. They spend months building something, business plan, products, relationships. And right when traction was starting to form, right when consistency was about to compound, they say, it's not working, and walk away. And someone else steps in, keeps going, and reaps the benefit of what the first person almost earned. I've seen it with fitness. Someone trains for weeks, builds discipline, starts to change their lifestyle. But because the mirror doesn't change fast enough, they give up. Meanwhile, their body was adjusting. Their systems were adapting. The benefits were days away from surfacing. They were right there, but they didn't stay. It's the same in every area of life. What feels like it's not working is often just a few steps away from working. And you won't know until you keep going. That's the trade. You have to give more time than you think, more consistency than feels necessary, and more patience than most are willing to offer. But if you do, you get something most people never experience: the compound return of staying. Because here's what happens when you stay. You start seeing confirmation. The things you were hoping for start showing up. You start hearing, hey, I've noticed you've been at this a while, or I've been following your work, or that thing you shared really helped me. Proof starts appearing. Doors open, invitations come, results compound. But none of that happens unless you stay long enough to collect it. And once you've stayed long enough, something even bigger happens. You become the kind of person who finishes. You stop questioning whether you can trust yourself, because you've already proven that you can. You've become someone who shows up regardless. Someone who doesn't quit just because it's quiet. That identity, that's worth more than any temporary result. Because once you become that kind of person, you can do anything. So before you walk away, pause. Ask yourself, what if this is the part right before it starts working? What if I'm closer than I think? What if staying a little longer is all it would have taken? And if there's even a chance that's true, you stay. You keep going. You give it one more day, one more week, one more rep, because staying doesn't cost much, but quitting might cost everything. Most people don't fail because they couldn't do it. They fail because they walked away too soon. They stopped showing up right before the tide was about to turn, right before the roots they'd been building finally pushed through the surface, right before it started working. And it's not because they were weak. It's because they didn't realize where they were. They mistook silence for failure. They mistook slow progress for no progress. They thought they were behind, when in reality, they were right on time. The work was working. It just hadn't shown up yet. But now you know. You know how progress hides in the beginning. You know how momentum builds quietly. You know that the dip is part of the process, not a sign to quit. And you know that discipline, not motivation, is what carries you through. That's what separates the people who talk about results from the people who get them. So, if you're thinking about giving up, if you're wondering if any of this is worth it, stop and ask yourself one question. What if this is the part where it's just about to work? What if all the quiet, all the waiting, all the effort that felt like it wasn't adding up was about to break through? Wouldn't that be something to see? Don't walk away. Not now. Not when you've already come this far. Not when you've already done the hard part. Stay a little longer. Keep showing up. Keep doing the work. Because most people quit right before it starts working. And you're not most people.